What if everything you've been taught about money is backwards? What if working harder, earning more, and saving carefully is actually the slowest way to build wealth? And what if the people who seem lucky, the investors, the business owners, the quietly rich, aren't smarter or more talented? They just understand one invisible rule. A rule so powerful that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people spend their entire lives working for money. But the wealthy, they make money work for them. And the difference between those two paths compounds quietly over decades, until one ends in financial stress and the other in financial freedom. But here's the twist. This isn't about hustle. It isn't about luck. And it isn't about being born rich. It's about understanding how money actually behaves. And to understand that, we have to go back. Before we talk about investing, before passive income, before side hustles, we need to talk about the system you were born into. Because money didn't always work the way it does today. And the people who learned to make money work for them, they weren't guessing. They were following patterns that have existed for centuries. Let's rewind. Thousands of years ago, wealth wasn't measured in paper currency. It was land. It was livestock. It was control over resources. If you owned land, crops grew. If you owned animals, they reproduced. If you controlled trade routes, goods multiplied. Wealth wasn't earned hourly. It multiplied. That was the first secret. Assets produce more assets. Fast forward to medieval Europe. Peasants worked land they didn't own. They traded time for survival. They paid taxes to lords who did nothing but own. The land worked. The peasants worked. The lords collected. Money, or value, was already working for someone. The pattern was clear. Ownership creates leverage. But then came a shift. In the 1700s and 1800s, factories replaced farmland. Machines replaced hand tools. Labor became hourly, and something subtle but powerful happened. Income became tied to time. You worked 10 hours, you got paid for 10 hours. But factory owners, they didn't get paid hourly. They owned machines. The machines worked 24 hours. The profits scaled. This was the second evolution of making money work for you. Capital ownership greater than labor income. And that divide, it still exists today. Then came banks, stock markets, corporations. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company issued shares to the public. Ordinary citizens could now own a piece of a company. For the first time in history, people didn't need land or factories. They could buy ownership through paper. That changed everything. Because now money itself could be deployed. You could put $100 somewhere, and that $100 could return $110, then $121. Then, $133 compounding. But most people didn't understand it, and many still don't. Let's jump to the 20th century. The American dream was born. Go to school, get a good job, work hard, retire at 65. It sounded safe, stable, logical, and for a while, it worked. Post-World War II economic expansion created strong middle classes, but there was a hidden flaw in the system, and it wasn't obvious at first. Wages grow linearly. Investments grow exponentially. If you earn $50,000 a year and get a 5% raise, your income grows slowly. But if you invest money that grows at 8 to 10% annually, it compounds. Over decades, that gap becomes massive. Yet most people focused on increasing income, not increasing ownership. That's where the divergence begins. Let me ask you something. If you stop working tomorrow, does your income stop too? For most people, yes. That's the breaking point. Because true financial power isn't about income. It's about whether your income depends on your effort. If income equals time, you're trapped in a loop. But if income equals assets, you've built leverage. This is the moment most people realize something is wrong. They see someone younger with investments outperforming someone older with decades of salary. They see business owners earning in months what employees earn in years. They see markets crash, and investors quietly buy more. But they still hesitate, because school taught them how to earn, not how to allocate. Here's where it gets darker. Modern society made one thing extremely easy: spending money you don't have. Credit cards, car loans, mortgages, buy now pay later. Instead of buying assets, most people buy liabilities. A car loses value. A phone depreciates. Clothes don't generate income, but the payments remain. This creates negative compounding. Interest works both ways. When you invest, interest works for you. When you borrow, interest works against you. And over time, that difference becomes devastating. When people feel financial pressure, what do? They work more hours, take extra shifts, start another job. But here's the problem. You cannot outwork exponential growth with linear effort. No matter how hard you hustle, there are only 24 hours in a day. Meanwhile, money invested in productive assets works 24/7. Even while you sleep, even while you rayon bakation, even while you're sick. That's the leverage difference. Today, we see the same divide in new forms. Employees trade time for salary. Tech founders build scalable platforms. Investors deploy capital into systems that run without them. In 2023, studies showed that over 60% of billionaires are self-made, but nearly all of them own assets. Stocks, companies, real estate, intellectual property. Ownership is the common denominator. Not talent, not degrees, not luck. Ownership. And yet, most financial advice still revolves around budgeting instead of building, saving instead of allocating, cutting coffee instead of acquiring cash-flowing assets. The narrative distracts from the real mechanism. Because the system benefits when you remain a worker, it shifts when you become an owner. So what does it actually mean to make money work for you? It means building systems where effort is front-loaded, reward is long-term, income is detached from hours. It means converting earned income into productive assets. But that raises the next question. If it's so powerful, why doesn't everyone do it? The answer lies in psychology, risk perception, and financial literacy. And in part 2, we'll break down the psychology that keeps people stuck. The compounding math. Most people ignore the exact categories of assets that generate leverage in the moment most wealthy people made their first shift, because understanding the concept is step 1. Executing it is step 2. The psychology trap. Why most people never escape. Before we talk about assets, before strategies, before returns, we need to confront the real barrier. It's not money, it's psychology. Because making money work for you requires one uncomfortable shift: delayed gratification. And historically, humans are terrible at that. Our brains evolved for survival, not long-term investing. When early humans found food, they ate it. They didn't store it for 10 years hoping for compound growth. Immediate reward feels safe. Long-term reward feels uncertain. That's why. Spending feels natural, investing feels risky, consumption feels rewarding, ownership feels abstract. This is the invisible barrier, and financial systems quietly take advantage of it. Advertisements promise happiness now. Credit promises convenience now. Lifestyle upgrades promise Validation now, but assets promise something different. Freedom later, and later is emotionally harder to choose. That is the psychological battlefield. Now let's introduce the quiet force behind everything. Compounding. Albert Einstein allegedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he said it or not doesn't matter, because the math speaks for itself. Let's break it down simply. If you invest $10,000 at 10% annual growth, year uno, 11,000 year, 5, 16,105 year, 10, 25,937 year, 20, 67,275 year, 3,174,494. Notice something. The first 10 years look unimpressive. The last 10 years look explosive. That's the trap. Compounding is slow until it isn't. Most people quit in the boring phase, but wealth is built in the boring phase. Now here's the dangerous twist. Debt compounds too. A $10,000 credit card balance at 20% interest compounds against you. Assets compound for you. Debt compounds against you. Money doesn't care which side you're on. It just follows math. Let's connect cause and effect. In the 1900s, stock markets became accessible to the public. In the 1970s, index funds were introduced. In the 1980s and 1990s, retirement accounts expanded. In the 2000s, online brokerages removed trading barriers. In the 2010s, apps made investing frictionless. Access is no longer the problem. Information is no longer the problem. Discipline is the problem. Because when investing became easier, spending also became easier. Technology democratized both wealth creation and wealth destruction, and the average person toggles between them daily. Now we get practical. There are 5 primary ways money works for you. 1. Ownership of businesses when you own a business, or shares in one. You own profit generation. Businesses scale. Labor does not. This is why equity is powerful, whether it's a startup, dividend stocks, or private ownership. Businesses create leverage. 2. Real estate produces cash flow, appreciation, tax advantages, leverage through financing, and historically, property ownership has been a cornerstone of wealth accumulation. But here's the caution. Real estate without cash flow becomes speculation. Cash flow is the engine. 3. Financial markets, stocks, index funds, ETFs, bonds. These allow participation in economic growth. Instead of working inside a company, you can own part of many companies. And historically, diversified equity markets have compounded over long periods. The key word, long for. Intellectual property books, music, software, online courses, patents. These are assets created once and monetized repeatedly. In the digital age, this category has exploded. One piece of content can generate income for years. This is scalable effort. 5. Automated systems, digital businesses, e-commerce, licensing models, subscription platforms. These remove direct time input from income output. The initial work is heavy. The long-term maintenance is light. That's the formula. Now let's address the elephant in the room. In the last 30 years, cost of living has risen dramatically. Housing prices have outpaced wage growth. Inflation erodes purchasing power yearly. Pension systems have weakened. Job security has decreased. The old system worked 40 years. Retire comfortably is fragile, which means relying solely on salary has never been riskier. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Inflation silently punishes savers. If inflation averages 3% annually, your money loses half its purchasing power in about 24 years. So keeping cash without growth is slow erosion. That's why money must be deployed. not ordered. When financial stress increases, common advice appears. Cut expenses. Stop buying coffee. Cancel subscriptions. These are useful, but insufficient. Cost cutting creates margin. Ownership creates growth. Margin without growth is survival. Margin plus growth is freedom. Another failed fix: chasing trends, crypto bubbles, meme stocks, speculative hype cycles. These promise shortcuts, but making money work for you is not about speed. It's about sustainability. And sustainability requires diversification, patience, cash flow, focus, risk management, not viral excitement. Look closely at today's wealth creators. They share patterns. They own equity. They reinvest profits. They avoid lifestyle inflation early. They buy assets before luxuries. They prioritize cash flow over status. Now, compare that to consumer culture. Upgrade the car, upgrade the phone, upgrade the house, upgrade the lifestyle. The pattern repeats across centuries. Owners accumulate, consumers circulate. The system rewards capital allocation more than effort, and that may feel unfair, but ignoring it doesn't change it. Now, we conclude. If you remember nothing else from this entire story, remember these 3 principles. Takeaway 1. Income is not wealth. Income is a tool. Wealth is ownership. You can earn 6 figures and remain financially fragile, or earn moderately and build resilient assets. Income funds. Assets. Assets fund freedom. Takeaway 2. Time is more powerful than timing. Most people wait for the perfect moment. Markets fluctuate. News cycles, panic. Recessions scare. But historically, long-term participation has outperformed perfect timing attempts. Consistency beats prediction. Time in the market greater than timing in the market. Takeaway 3. Leverage is the multiplier. Leverage can be financial leverage, using capital operational leverage systems. Creative leverage content. Equity leverage ownership. The wealthy multiply effort. The average multiply hours. Choose multiplication. But here's the warning. Making money work for you is not passive at the beginning. It requires learning, discipline, sacrifice, emotional control during downturns. There will be years when growth stalls. There will be months when markets fall. There will be moments when doubt screams. And this is where most people quit. Not because the strategy failed, but because patience failed. Wealth building is less about intelligence and more about endurance. So here asks the question that remains. If you continue exactly as you are today, will your future income depend on your effort? Or will it depend on your assets? Because 10 years will pass anyway. 20 years will pass anyway. The only difference will be, did your money sit still, or did it learn how to work? If this shifted your perspective, if you now see the invisible system differently, then your next step isn't drastic. It's deliberate. Start small, learn consistently, allocate intentionally, build patiently. And if you want more deep dives into financial systems, compounding strategies, economic psychology, and long-term wealth building, subscribe. Because understanding money is not about chasing trends. It's about seeing patterns. And once you see them, you can't unsee them.